Dear friends, welcome to the Eastern Front channel. Today we will dive into the memories of the killed Lieutenant Gerhard Link. This is the second part of his diary, which was captured on the battlefield. Links for the other part will be at the end of this video. In this video I will show on the Google map the advance and retreat of the German army, in accordance with the diary of the murdered lieutenant. We will trace his path, near Moscow, to his last destination, where he found eternal rest in Mother Russia. In his diary, he willingly shared his thoughts about why there was such a difficult situation near Moscow. Perhaps it is the memories of Lieutenant Link that will shed light on the reasons for the defeat of the Germans near Moscow in the winter of 1941. Well, let's get down to Lieutenant Link's diary. November 25th to 29th, 1941. We are on a line, captured from the enemy. The neighboring parts are located at an equal height with us. On the contrary, the right flank is lagging behind. We failed to break the enemy's resistance. Formations of the Waffen-SS and tanks have occupied Istra and are moving forward to the east. By doing this, they temporarily take away from us the glory of being closer to Moscow. We bury the dead of our regiment at Sermino. The weather is clearing up. This makes it possible for aviation to strengthen its activities. The attached anti-aircraft combat group of Lieutenant Geck shoots down one single-seat fighter. Neighboring anti-aircraft guns shot down several enemy aircraft. We are generally calm and conducting reconnaissance. I have established contact with the 7th and 187th Infantry Regiments. We are forming 2 battalions from the regiment, each with 2 rifle and 1 machine gun company. There is no point in continuing to fight with such insignificant forces. New patients are sent to the infirmary every day. Of these soldiers, we do not see anyone else later, despite the fact that there are mild diseases. Also, Lieutenant Zech had to go to the rear. I do not know what it will eventually lead to. Our hope is Guderian's tank units that penetrated from the southwest against Moscow. When the circle closes, we will also move on to creating a strong line of defense for the winter. If only it wouldn't snowfall, the advance of motorized transport in this case will be difficult, and the infantry will become less mobile. In general, we Germans are not used to waging war in winter, and our weapons do not meet such harsh conditions. Everyone who hears about the successes of the troops should have all the more respect for the affairs of people dressed in gray cloth. Untold tension and hardships accompany all our conquests. November 30th, 1941. Sunday, cloudy day, slight frost. Snowflakes are falling slowly. The offensive should be continued in the morning. The commanders of the attached units spend the whole day in discussions. Clever drivers wove a festive wreath. For half an hour, by candlelight, we indulge in the Christmas mood. With the dancing candlelight, the rough wooden walls are not visible, and the windows that have flown out, plugged with hay, are invisible. A cup of tea is steaming in front of us, a round cookie sent by my mother, just in time. These little things from the past peaceful life find a lot of praise among us. We haven't eaten anything like this for a long time. December 1st, 1941. With the onset of the day, progress continues. The advanced battalion occupies a position on the edge of the forest from Svetovo to Kazmino. Fortifications are camouflaged in the bushes. They were taken with a fight. Visibility is extremely poor, due to dense thickets. I'm looking at the broken trenches. In almost every one, the twisted figure of a Soviet soldiers are visible. I stick a wooden pole into the trenches and throw heavy clods of frozen earth. No one is moving, everyone is dead. The sappers of our regiment are busy collecting and destroying Russian weapons. At the same time, they took many prisoners. Meanwhile, the advanced 3rd Battalion made its way to the edge of the forest. Machine guns are viciously scribbling through the branches. In some places we assumed the presence of mines. The battalion took its intended starting position. The next 2nd Battalion was ordered to bypass the neighboring village of Kazmino by the forest and axe from the flank. The clearing marked on the map does not exist in reality. There are no telephone operators in place. In the ranks we go through the snow-covered forest. I, as a liaison officer, accompany the battalion. Suddenly, a shootout begins in the forest with a guard outpost, which, unfortunately, we could not catch them by surprise. They noticed us when we were 30 paces away. Our artillery shells are flying almost over us. The locality should now be nearby. Soon we see him lying around the bend of the river. Machine gun and rifle fire from the side of the Schweipers battalion, which is also attacking the enemy. Interspersed with this are the assault guns. Quickly rearranging the order of battle, Schlegel's battalion broke into the village. Enemy machine guns mounted in the bushes on the edge of the village are still scribbling on it. My telephone operators are in place, but there is no connection. It just makes me sick. Walking through an open area, the 3rd Battalion approaches. They took up positions. The Bolsheviks are holding the village under light artillery fire. Regrouped again, the 3rd Battalion under the command of Senior Lieutenant Mage is advancing on Lipki, but he only goes a few hundred meters and stops as darkness falls. The tractor of a heavy anti-aircraft gun ran into a mine and failed. A non-commissioned officer of an anti-aircraft platoon was killed at his gun. Lieutenant Gotchling was hit in the chest by a machine gun burst. He died a heroic death. Lieutenant Felborg was already wounded at noon. Several shells hit the assault artillery gun, then the panoramic sight was broken. Both are now unusable. Our losses are also significant. It was cold all day, especially noticeable when you go into the house to warm up. Outside, everything calmed down. We're going to sleep. I pull out a frozen slice of bread from my pocket and destroy it with an enviable appetite. At night, the 3rd Battalion pushes the enemy back. Reconnaissance detachments make their way through the forest and find the village of Lipki, our target, not occupied. They enter it at night, set up posts. After a restless night, we move further forward. December 2, 1941. The main forces of the regiment arrive in the Lipki occupied at night. The goal of the day, to take the Politsy, has been achieved. Schlegel's battalion must fight its way through the forest in battles with the Bolshevik rearguards and comb the area on both sides of the village. Meanwhile, the 10th Company cleans the position occupied by the enemy without losses for itself. I'm back with the 2nd Battalion. The edge of the forest is under mortar fire. The village should be at the foot of a gentle hill that lies ahead of us. The terrain is open, only in the distance, on the horizon, you can see the forest. To our left, far ahead, stretches the forest. Not far from the edge of the village, there should be a birch grove. It takes a considerable number of hours before everything is prepared. We impatiently step from one foot to the other. My feet are freezing. I observe the carelessness of our people. They gather in groups on the edge of the forest right in a prominent place. I vigorously chastise several officers. I am very surprised by the order of the cars. They follow, in large groups, not paying attention to the disguise. My comments are wasted. The battalion is moving towards the settlement. The company crawls from the edge of the forest to the birch grove. The place is under artillery fire. There are no Russians. In front of us is the valley of the Moscow River. Behind the stacks, the outlines of the next village. Movement is visible there. Heavy guns quickly approach the positions. Heavy machine guns, anti-tank guns, light regimental guns open fire with direct fire. The Politsy village lie on a hill. On the other side of the Moscow River are forested hills. This position will not be very pleasant for the Russians. One impatient machine gunner also wants to open fire. Stupidly, the first machine gun burst hits our own comrades. Lieutenant Schreiterer is seriously wounded and will bleed out soon. After the regimental commander, who arrived at that time, outlined the line of main resistance, I returned back to Lipki to the command post. We settled down at the school. In the evening, a pleasant surprise. The general calls the colonel to him and informs him that the Führer awards him the Knight's Order of the Iron Cross. This proud award is a worthy recognition of all that this man has done, his successes. The weather is clear and cold, all day long, intensive activity of Russian aviation. At night, our doctor discovers a whole colony of bedbugs in the wall. He wears out almost the entire battery of his pocket flashlight, watching them. December 3, 1941. About 20 hours 3 low-flying biplanes dropped leaflets, but this outrage did not cause us any harm. They also appear above the Politsy village. The guard guarding the headquarters grabs a carbine and shoots down one of the cars with 3 shots. It lights up. Cold, clear starry sky, the snow creaks underfoot. December 4, 1941. We are experiencing heavy hours again. The enemy is attacking Politsy village with large forces. It was recaptured from the southern and eastern sides, but he made his way into the forest north of the village and threatens to break through between our strong points. Senior Lieutenant Mage from the 3rd Battalion is assigned the task of clearing the area from the enemy. I'm called there. Fierce fighting ensues in the forest. The shots don't stop for a minute. Repeated echoes reinforce the impression of shots. Heavy machine guns of the Russians are ironing bushes, shells are whistling around, the fire subsides for a while, then the shell hoots heavily, and the whole damn thing starts again. They shoot, in my opinion, more blindly, only at the intended target, bullets whistling here and there are confusing, since no one can distinguish between their own and the enemy's. After the first unexpected clash, the Russians are no longer visible, their undirected fire keeps our people at a distance. It is a thankless task to grope, not knowing where, through a dense bush. From time to time, a cry is heard, it's someone caught by a bullet. Poor wounded, blue-faced, lying on the cold snow, it is almost impossible to alleviate the situation of helpless people in these conditions. I am called in to watch the left flank and inform, walking along with one lightly wounded man, all the time carefully watching the terrain. After a while, I meet a reconnaissance squad that has been sent to reinforce. I acquaint the commander with the situation. Suddenly we notice at a short distance from us, near the village of Politsy, several dark figures lying in the snow. From time to time, they move cautiously. There are about 15 to 20 of them, there is no doubt, they are Russians. Crawling, they want to get back to their own. I raised the carbine to my shoulder, the reconnaissance squad finished them off and captured 4 heavy machine guns. Meanwhile, the 3rd Battalion managed to take several machine gun nests and destroy the enemy entrenched in the forest. With the onset of darkness, the situation changed in our favor. We captured 15 heavy machine guns and put them into disrepair. 43 prisoners are in our hands. But we also shed a lot of blood. The regiment lost 31 soldiers killed and 55 wounded, which significantly reduced its combat capability. The senior lieutenant from the 1st Company of the 187th Sapper Battalion died the next day from a severe chest wound. December 5, 1941. At night, the temperature dropped to -26°C. We feel the enemy's merciless fire on us and intend to move the main line of defense to the edge of the forest, since the village of Politsy is unfavorable for leading the resistance. Around midnight, the enemy's disturbing fire reaches the Politsy village. Heavy Russian artillery sends a hurricane of destructive fire to the village. In the intervals between shots, the terrain is illuminated by rockets. All this, without a doubt, means preparation for the offensive. As always, at such crucial moments, the telephone cable turns out to be damaged, and the radio cannot be used due to severe frosts. The situation is depressing, uncertain. I'm heading to the edge of the forest to find out the details. A heavy smoke cloud rises above the Politsy, flames are shooting out of many houses. Heavy mines continuously crumble the village into splinters. It seems that tanks are also taking part in this case. The bursts of falling mines are so close that my eardrums feel the pressure of the airwave. Our artillery suppresses the enemy's explored firing points with concentrated fire. There is such a noise in the air, as if a flock of geese flew by. That's why I remember the song Wild Geese Rustle in the night. The cues go to the target, while the infantry remains inactive. Several heavy tanks are approaching the village. We with our medium tanks are powerless against these monsters. But the enemy infantry is scattered. The Mage Battalion, which arrived in time, replaces Schlegel's battalion. A lot of cars and horses burned down. Lieutenant Wenzel is slightly wounded by shrapnel. The whole day cost us 11 killed, 34 wounded, 19 soldiers suffered severe frostbite. The loss of officers is significant. Lieutenant Georgi died a heroic death. The 1st Battalion of the 187th Artillery Regiment lost many officers wounded. It is a desperate pity that none of them who got sick or were wounded and sent to the rear did not return to the front line again. There is no need to think about a full-fledged replenishment. It is not clear when we will be replaced. We are starting to calculate when the last people will be out of action, then there will be no one to hold a weapon in their hands. The presence of people capable of servicing heavy machine guns or heavy mortars is so insignificant that with further loss these types of weapons will not be able to be used. In addition, some of them, along with vehicles, were left there due to the lack of personnel when they entered the Ruza on November 1st. The icy wind throws prickly needles of snow in the face, a hard crust settles on the balaclava from breathing. Some parts of the face quickly turn white, and after a few minutes of being in the cold, you return frostbitten. Numerous guard posts and guards are trying to warm, at least the feet most sensitive to cold at the miserable campfires. Our uniforms do not stand comparison with the Russian. The opponent has cotton pants and jackets, he is dressed in felt boots and fur hats. Recently, a small batch of fur coats has arrived. They are issued to soldiers who have to be in the cold more time. Shoes are not enough, especially in the current state of boots and socks. December 6, 1941. Having failed to achieve success in our direction, the Reds rushed to their nearest neighbors. Here and there, heavy local battles lead to success. The right flank of the corps is still lagging behind. Therefore, an order was given to straighten the line. The reconnaissance will be carried out early in the morning. On the site of our regiment, this line is extremely unprofitable. It passes mostly through the forest. It takes me hard to think whether I can complete the position with my small forces and hold it. In the morning I went first to Kesnino, and then to Svetovo to prepare command posts. The road was crowded with cars of every part imaginable. With great difficulty, with other formations, I was able to place a command post in a kindergarten, a massive stone building. December 7, 1941, Christmas Post. We are aware of the impossibility of holding the line of defense. Further withdrawal of forces to the Sermino, Lucchino area is expected. Together with the commander, we inspect the area for a new position. Sappers begin immediately the construction of dugouts and barriers. There is a dressing station in the orphanage. One morning, at reception hours, about 30 soldiers from a recently transferred rifle company appear here. In general, about 80 people were brought, 40 of them with frostbite of the 2nd and 3rd degree, who should be transferred to the infirmary. Swollen legs are covered with blisters, and these are no longer legs, but some kind of shapeless mass, in some cases already blackened. Those who have passed unscathed through the rain of fragments until now become disabled here. A few surviving houses cannot give shelter for the night to everyone. Huddled closely together, people lie down to the very vestibule. They heat up bone-hard bread in an open oven. How bad these people look. They are tired and unshaven, and their clothes are shabby. From fatigue, people fall right where they are standing. What to do next? Not a single fresh person who could take the place of the one who will fail today. Is there really no division that could replace us? The headquarters of the Supreme High Command carefully analyzed the situation on the Soviet-German front in December 1941. The command came to the conclusion that it was necessary to take decisive measures to take away the strategic initiative from the enemy. It was decided to strike the main blow in the western direction. It is here that the High Command has concentrated most of its reserves. Planning a counteroffensive, the Soviet command sought to exploit the difficulties of the German fascist troops, who did not have time to regroup for defense, and were forced to resist the attacks of the Red Army in unprepared positions. However, this was a risk for the Soviet Union, since it was necessary to launch an offensive operation immediately, without any pause after defensive battles. According to intelligence data, the command established that there were no troops in the rear of the Germans. All reserves were exhausted and drawn into the battle. The enemy soldiers were very tired, their morale was falling. From the lieutenant's diary, we see that the Germans had a very hard time since December 5th. It was on the 5th that the Moscow strategic offensive operation began. Contrary to all the predictions of Field Marshal von Bock about the impossibility of the Soviet troops going on a counteroffensive on a broad front, at dawn on December 5, 1941, the Moscow strategic offensive operation began, with strikes by the armies of the Kalinin front. A day later, the troops of the Western Front and the task force of the Southwestern Front went on the offensive. Soviet troops inflicted a serious defeat on selected enemy formations. As a result of the Red Army's December counteroffensive, the direct threat to Moscow was eliminated. The combat capabilities of the German troops have significantly decreased. Under the blows of the Soviet troops, the German fascist formations at first slowly, and then more and more actively moved to the west. They abandoned military equipment, transport, remaining warehouses with ammunition, equipment and food. Along the roads along which the German army retreated from Moscow, more and more enemy graves appeared. At the beginning of 1942, the Soviet counteroffensive ended. The enemy was driven back from the walls of the capital. Germans suffered heavy losses. 38 of his divisions were defeated. During the Battle of Moscow, the German army lost up to 500,000 people killed and captured. 1.3 thousand tanks, 2.5 thousand guns and mortars, more than 15,000 cars. The fields of the Moscow region were littered with broken and burned military equipment. Dear friends, that's all for today. It was Tim, with the voice of James. I hope you will like the new voice, and now, there are no problems with understanding. If you like this video, please support it with like and write your opinion about the reasons why Germans were defeated near Moscow.